What's up, guys? Welcome to Q&A Mondays. I'm Thad Barnette. Today we're talking about repainting your metal roof as a homeowner and proper steps to do it DIY. And today I've got Chris from Edge Façade Restorations. Thanks, Chris, for being here.
Thanks for having me, Thad.
Absolutely. So first question is, can a homeowner successfully repaint their own metal roof?
Yes, the short answer is you absolutely can. When we look at an architectural metal application in the field, particularly if there's a DIY situation, it's important that consideration for the condition of the roof is the number one thing looked at. When I say that, I mean, is there rust? How much rust is there? Do we have contaminants such as mildew, mold, things that have built up on the roof over time? I mean, that's certainly the first consideration in considering whether you can do it yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of what's that threshold where a homeowner says, this is too far gone for me to take it on myself?
Yeah, I think definitely it goes beyond just contaminants such as mildew and mildew. Those are often things that can be, low pressure cleaned. It can be done, even with some solvents and some cleaners. But once you get to a point where you see the coating system that was put onto the metal roof from the factory level deteriorate, where you're getting exposure of the substrate that comes in the form of rust or corrosion, I think at that point there should be consideration of, can I do this by myself? Because there's a remediation process that happens with rust. If we were just to paint over rust, we're going to have issues that further take us down the road of more problems in the future.
Okay, great point. So let's say we don't have those problems. Everything is in pretty good condition. I'm a homeowner. What's my first steps, after I determine that I can repaint this successfully?
Definitely. One is access. Do I feel like I can safely access the roof and perform that work, right, in a safe manner that I'm not going to, harm myself? After that, there comes the cleanliness factor. What do I need to do to prepare this surface to be done properly? Preparation of the surface, one, is going to depend on the condition of it. What do we have? What are we dealing with? And then the second thing to consider in how do we prepare or clean the surface is looking at what are the manufacturer's recommendations. So that then takes us to coating selection. I need to consider what sort of paint do I want to put on this roof to extend its service life. There's really a range of good, better, best in this situation. The most accessible coating system for a homeowner to do it themselves is called a direct-to-metal coating, or a DTM. That can be found at most paint stores. It's usually an acrylic blended product that doesn't require a primer system, that as long as it goes over a properly prepared and clean surface, can be directly applied. That can be directly applied, via brush and roller or spray application. And in a DIY situation, there may be a better comfort level with rolling that coating system on there versus using a traditional airless system.
Okay. And so the coating manufacturer will have instructions on how to prepare the surface?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously the idea is find the coating system you want, which will ultimately be defined by what level of service life do you want to extend it. So in the direct to metal we talked about, you can typically expect 5 years of service life out of that coating system. And then there's another level to go from the better coating system, that is a polyurethane system. When you deal in polyurethanes, you're dealing a lot more in high-end commercial painting, but it's still an accessible coating system to a homeowner. They can find it at a specialty paint store or a commercial paint store.
Okay.
When that system is applied, the manufacturers are going to require a primer system. So now we've added a step in the process. So again, cleanliness of surface preparation according to the manufacturer, install the primer system, and then ultimately apply the top coat polyurethane system that comes with it. The difference there between that and the DTM is now we have a service life of 10 up to 15 years, depending on where it's installed geographically.
Okay. And when you say where it's installed geographically, what are some environmental concerns that can affect that service life?
Yeah, absolutely. The number one thing is how much sun exposure that roof has, right? So areas that are, south and have a lot more sun exposure, Florida, Southern California, Texas, those are the locations where I think you're really going to want something a little beefier than a DTM product, because that UV attack is constant. And so you want a better system that has better pigments and binders that can ultimately fight that UV attack. And what UV attack does to these coating systems is it eats away at the ability for those coating systems to retain the chalk and color that you originally had when the new install occurred.
Does salt water make a difference?
Yeah, it definitely does. That's another geographic consideration. That really comes down to the cleanliness of the surface before you apply the coating system to make sure that salts and chlorids in those salt-rich environments don't get trapped inside the coating system. But it also then is important that you're selecting, again, probably a better of the products and not one of the lower end products, because that salt attack combined with the UV attack is like this continued weathered cycle of it's like a salt water, just rinse and repeat, and it actually breaks the coating system down even further, much quicker.
Yep. What types of tools does a homeowner need to have to apply these coatings?
Yeah, so going back to surface preparation, almost always going to recommend that a low pressure wash is done first. Remove all contamination, anything that may have built up over a number of years on there. So you start with the pressure washing equipment, which you either can own or rent, obviously. And then surface preparation will vary. If we have rust, we may need to consider some tools that can actually sand them, some electric tools that can actually sand those surfaces to remove it. Some levels of rust require something much more extensive, such as blasting, which may not be recommended for a DIY situation. And then from the actual application of the coating system, we can either use a brush and roll system where we can actually brush and roll apply, much like we do to the exterior of our home or even the interior walls. Or if we're looking for an even more improved aesthetic, we can move to an airless spray system, which can also be purchased or rented.
Sure. So how long does an installation typically take?
For a professional, I think on a common size or average size home, I think a roof can take somewhere between 3 to 5 days. I think if you haven't done it yourself, you should expect it to take maybe a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Just because of unfamiliarity, maybe even lack of crew size, and you may be doing it yourself or with someone. So I think 2 weeks is a good average on how long it would take to perform this work yourself.
So how do you protect the roof in between those periods where you're installing and not installing?
Yeah, you don't and you can't, right? I mean, think about the size of your roof, and you apply, one section of the coating system, and you're waiting for it to dry. So the consideration is more about weather, right? You have to make sure that there's not precipitation coming, there's not rain in the forecast. What can happen is if the coatings haven't cured fully, the water can actually negatively affect the performance of the work itself. So it's really about forecasting the weather, making sure you're doing the application at the right time of year and you're not in a rainy season in your particular region.
Okay. Yeah, and what are those drying times like?
Yeah, they vary significantly. So depending on the selection of the coating system, dry time on average on a primer system is going to be a requirement by the manufacturer of 24 to 48 hours. And the importance of that is they're trying to get a full cure and tack over of that system prior to you putting on the top coat. Once the top coat's on, the important thing to look at from a drying perspective is you're going to, again, be in another 24 to 48 hour cure time. You want to make sure, again, you don't have rain or precipitation that actually comes in contact with that system as it's trying to cure, which it's really the difference between a factory coating system done in a controlled environment, right? Where we have none of these considerations we have to look at, and then doing it ourselves and trying to put a new coating system on in the field has its hurdles.
Yeah, talk to me about the difference between the factory applied coating and the air dry coating.
Yeah, exactly. So in a factory situation, we're in a very controlled environment. We're also doing this coating application, one, by machines, right? So take a lot of human error out of that. They're done on a line, and that line ultimately is done consistently and repetitive process over and over, meeting the specifications of the coating manufacturer as they're required for them to offer their substantial warranties. And then the other big piece of a factory coating versus a field is it's actually baked on, which means it's heated, and that coating system is quickly and very integrally cured into the metal system itself. Whereas in the field, we have these weather considerations we have to look at. We just have some challenges and hurdles to make sure we get the coating system on right. Not to say that it can't be done. It has been. We've been doing it for 15 years successfully on metal roofs and vertical surfaces. The difference between service life on the two, I'd say, depending on the coating system, the highest rated coating systems coming out of a factory, the OEM level, offer 20 to 30 years of warranty on their new systems. In the field, we're getting a maximum of 15 years on the warranties. And I think that has a lot to do, again, with controlled environment versus non-controlled, and then ultimately adding heat to the curing process at the factory. And what we're relying on in the field is air drying. So most of these coating systems are called air dry systems because that's how they cure. Chemically, they have to do it over time rather than have an accelerated ability to do it.
Exactly. And if I'm a homeowner, can I repaint just a section of my metal roof or maybe one plane? Tell me about that.
Yeah, you definitely can. Sometimes damage occurs. Some branches fall on your roof or some other methodology, something happens to the roof itself. You certainly can paint a section of the roof. The major consideration in doing that is it's likely going to weather differently than the rest of the roof. So if we have a roof that's been weathering for 10 years and now we just paint one section of it, we would expect that the weathering would continue at a accelerated level on the 10-year-old piece, and then you have a new piece that's gonna look different. Now, if you have damage during new installation, you have damage early on in the life of the roofing system, you often can have good success in making a section repair. You can also, if you have just small locations of scratches and things that happen, you can also go through and done properly, you can actually treat the areas individually just to make sure you don't have raw substrate exposed. So it won't create a large impact of visual difference or aesthetics in the roof because you just have small scratches. But what you're doing is you're protecting rust and formation of corrosion that could occur down the road.
Yeah. Let's go back and talk about warranties again. If I'm a homeowner applying a new coating system, can I still receive a warranty for this coating system I just applied?
Yes, that's typically not the case. Most manufacturers required a certified applicator, meaning they have experience in using those coating systems. They've been either monitored, reviewed, or trained directly by the manufacturer. You can certainly get your hands on good coating systems, but it's very unlikely that a homeowner would be able to get issued a warranty from a manufacturer on a product installation.
Okay, and that's good to know because you're also voiding the original warranty when you repaint.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea of touching and creating a profile or doing anything to an existing factory system would void that original warranty.
Sure. All right, Chris, so what didn't we cover for a homeowner? What else should they know when it comes to repainting their own metal roof?
I think the most important thing is the challenge of painting a metal roof. Again, it's very different than painting a vertical surface in your home on the exterior, interior. There's some definite access challenges in coming up there and doing it yourself. An architectural coating system is much different than a typical homeowner's coating system. So there is a lot of technical requirements in the coating systems. Oftentimes there's mixing requirements that need to be done. There's dwell times and how often or how long these coatings need to be stirred. They have pot life scenarios. And then there's a serious consideration for the technical requirements of the manufacturers to actually apply these coatings and for them to be installed the right way so that they perform to the level of expectation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Chris, thank you so much for sharing your information with us today. Where can people find you and your company?
Yep, you can find us at edgearc.com/facades, and you could also find me on LinkedIn.
All right, we appreciate it so very much. And if you have any questions, please comment down below and stay tuned for our next video. We're gonna talk about technical metal roof repainting from a professional commercial applicator and learn what that's all about. Subscribe here to the Metal Roofing channel. As always, I'm Thad Barnette. We'll catch you next time.